Hi everybody, welcome to the Parallel Systems broadcast. I'm your host Mike. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight I am once again going to be revealing why the things you think you own, you do not actually legally own, because they have created laws to ensure that you don't own it outright. And this one's a shocking bombshell episode because we're going to be looking specifically at gold coins, the kind of gold coins that you invest in. So this one's going to be a very frightening episode for some. But at the end, I will give you some advice as to how you might try to counteract the shocking information that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. So let's go to the screen. I'm going to be looking specifically at some legislation that is very important for understanding the property rights around gold coins. So what we're going to be talking about today, everyone, is why gold coins that we buy that are capital gains tax free. So I'm talking about sovereigns, I'm talking about gold Britannias. In Canada, you've got the gold maple leaf. In Australia, you've got the golden kangaroo. And there's many other Commonwealth nations also that are issuing gold and silver coins, silver's included too, that have the monarch of the kingdom, or should I say queendom sometimes, of England. So we're talking about the crown or the figurehead who represents the crown. So any coin you've got that has the Queen's head on the back or the head of any monarch, including King Charles right now, that is a coin of the realm. And you'll find these coins across the world. Pretty much every Commonwealth nation is issuing coinage, gold and silver, that we buy capital gains tax free. And we buy these coins as investments. Now, I found some shocking information whilst researching the legislation, the legal acts around gold and silver coinage. And I'm going to be sharing that with you tonight. And take a stiff drink for this one because it is not pretty. Now, this is the most up-to-date Coinage Act in Great Britain, and therefore everything that is in it is up-to-date and currently a law. It is legal legislation in the UK. And in the future, should anything ever go to court relating to coinage, this is the act that they would be looking at to determine what the correct course of action was. Now, this is the introductory text here, so I'm going to read it out to you. Then we're going to go through the Coinage Act step by step. And as we get towards the end of the act, I'm going to reveal some extremely shocking information regarding gold coins and how they could be legally confiscated from you in some kind of, let's say, great taking crisis moment. An act to consolidate so far as they are a part of the law of the United Kingdom, the Coinage Acts of 1870 to 1946, and certain other enactments relating to coinage, with amendments to give effect to recommendations of the Law Commission and the Scottish Law Commission. So all this actually means is that historically, prior to this act, there were other coinage acts, and this one consolidates all of them, so it's the most up-to-date legislation. But what this act does is it sets out the rules around the creation of actual money. So we're talking physical money, not the stuff on the screen, not the digits, but the physical money. Gold coins, silver coins, and also cupro-nickel or aluminium coins, all the other coins that you see in circulation. Now, for people that are not aware, the coins that we have in circulation in Great Britain and also in Australia and Canada, they have denominations on them and they are classed as legal tender. Now, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean what most people think it means. Most people think legal tender means you can go and spend it at a shop, that you can use it in transactions, in trade. That's not actually the case. Legal tender is actually a legally defined term. And what it means is that that money can be used in the settlement of debts, full stop. And I've got this article here, Legal Tender Guidelines, and it says the following. Legal tender has a very narrow and technical meaning in the settlement of debts. It means that a debtor cannot successfully be sued for non-payment if they pay in court in legal tender. It does not mean that any ordinary transaction has to take place in legal tender or only within the amount denominated by the legislation. So this is all important to understand for understanding the Coinage Act. We have to understand what legal tender is, and we have to realize that the laws are very set in stone. And those laws are used by judges in courts of law to translate the law into actual real world actions. So legal tender is simply a coin that is able to settle a debt. Now, if the coin does not go into general circulation, such as a 1 ounce gold Britannia or a 1 ounce silver Britannia, if you take one of those coins to a shop, they do not have to accept it as payment for goods, although they would be crazy not to, because of course, a gold Britannia in Great Britain, a 1 ounce gold Britannia, is worth £100. That is the face value of it, and a silver Britannia has a legal face value of £2. However, remember, the shopkeeper doesn't have to accept it. He'd be mad not to, because if he was paying a £2 bill with a silver coin, he would be getting a great premium on whatever he was selling because the silver's worth much more. Okay, so going back to the Act, it talks about legal tender. Now you understand what that means. And it also talks about the Queen's Maundy money. Now what Maundy money is, it's money that is given at a celebration in church that happens every year to commemorate the washing of the feet that Jesus did of his disciples at the Last Supper. And going back to 1210, the reigning monarch in Great Britain has given gifts to the poor and needy during this celebration, or at least it used to be. Then at some point it transitioned to the monarch at the church service giving out coins, usually silver, in a pouch, and this was called Maundy money. Now it's written literally into legislation that this money can be chosen by the king or queen, the reigning monarch, the crown if you will, and they can choose the denomination, the weight, the fineness is up to them, and that is literally written into the legislation. So you're going to hear about Maundy money repeatedly also in the Coinage Act. Okay, so now let's move on to section 2, which is about legal tender, which you now know simply means coins or notes that can be used to legally settle a debt. And it says here, gold coins shall be legal tender for payment of any amount, but shall not be legal tender if their weight has become less than the specified weight in Schedule 1 of this Act, or in the proclamation under which they are made, as the least current weight. And you can see here, here's one of the examples of different coins that are used. So you got a £5 coin, a £2 coin, a sovereign, a half sovereign, the 4p silver coin, the 3 new pence, the 2 new pence. So this is all old coinage, and this gives us the standard weight in grams and the least current weight in grams. So it tells you which coins can be used for different things as legal tender. This one's specifically gold coins and silver coins of the Queen's Maundy money. And it tells you exactly what specifications are allowed if you're going to use these as legal tender. Now, if it goes below the least current weight in grams, you cannot use it as legal tender anymore. Now, of course, nobody is using these coins as legal tender, but I just wanted to share that with you so you get a better understanding of how the Act is laying out very specifically what people can and cannot do with money. Okay, so I wanted to share with you this next part. This is prohibition of coins and tokens not issued by authority, and this is section number 9 of the Coinage Act of 1971. And this one is just important for understanding that throughout history, the issuing of coinage for a nation, which can be then used to settle debts, has only been the reserved privilege of the most powerful and supreme ruler of the nation. So usually a king, a queen, or sometimes today is central banks. And you have to understand that when we look at these coins, it says that the crown gets to choose these coins. However, I would argue that it's not the crown, it's the central bank, because they have ultimate control over the nations of the West. So when we read this one, we have to understand that this is very, very rigid. They do not want anybody else producing any type of coin. And throughout history, this was punishable by death. Today, it's not quite so bad, but you can still be put in prison or fined. No piece of gold, silver, copper or bronze or of any metal or mixed metal of any value whatsoever shall be made or issued except with the authority of the Treasury, as a coin or a token for money, or as purporting that the holder thereof is entitled to demand any value denoted thereon. So what it's essentially saying is if you try to create your own money, let's imagine we all create our parallel system and we start to mint gold coins and say we're going to use these together, and we did that, say, in Great Britain, which is where this Act is actually valid, you could be arrested for that. You could actually be put in jail for it. And it says every person who acts in contravention of this section shall be liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding level 2 of the standard scale. Okay, so now we're getting to the meat of this one, and I'm going to read you the next section, which is number 3 in the Coinage Act 1971. Now, when I first read this section, I could not believe what I was reading, because I found lurking within there something that completely changes my understanding of gold investing for countries like Great Britain, Canada, and Australia. And ever since I read this, I've been telling people I work with, do not buy the gold coins that are capital gains tax free and that are issued by your national mint. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. Because inside this act, this legal act, there is a mechanism that would enable at any point for all of those gold coins that are issued capital gains tax free to be taken from the citizen by simply having a proclamation by the crown, which is of course the monarch. Now there's a reason people buy these coins, because like I've already mentioned, they're capital gains tax free, which means that if you buy this gold or silver coin that's issued by the national mint that has on the back of it the face of the monarch, if you buy those coins and they go up in value, then you sell them, you don't have to pay tax on the profits. Happy days. So most people think, well, those are the coins that I'm going to get. However, when this act was brought in, and remember it was 1971, which was just after the Bretton Woods system failed and people were now finally allowed to legally own gold again. But when they brought this act in, they put a secret trap within the act that would make it that anybody that bought those gold or silver coins could at any point have their property rights usurped on that gold and silver if it is the gold and silver that is minted by their national mint. And this is the same across all Commonwealth nations. So any crown colony, any crown nation, including Great Britain, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, any of those nations, if you're buying coins that are issued by the national mints that have the monarch's head on the back, and this goes for all coins in the past too that were issued by the national mint, they can be recalled at any time and taken from you. And it's there in the Coinage Act of 1971. And most people have no idea that this exists. So let's get to looking at it. And it starts like this: the power to regulate coinage by proclamation. Now, before we go any further, let's just look at what the word proclamation actually means legally. And it says this: proclamation, the act of proclaiming or something proclaimed, an official formal public announcement, such as a public notice, edict, or decree. So this is something that can be literally called at any point by somebody with the appropriate authority. And it says here in the Coinage Act that Her Majesty, now His Majesty, may from time to time, by proclamation made with the advice of Her or His Privy Council, do the following things. And I'm going to read them all out to you one by one. Determine the denominations of coins to be made at the mint. It also says they can determine the design of any coin, so they can put whatever they want on the coin. The next one, C, determine the weight and fineness of any gold coins or coins of silver of the Queen's Maundy money, which you now know about. Determine the weight and composition of any coins other than gold coins or coins of silver of the Queen's Maundy money. Provide for the variation of the standard weight to be measured in the manner specified of the proclamation. So essentially this gives the monarch the right to change the rules at any point when it comes to coins. They can literally have any coin designed, any fineness specified, any weight specified. It's up to them. And that can be done with the gold coins or coins of the Queen's Maundy money. So this is not taking away from the central bank and the Bank of England's powers, because they create fiat money. They are the masters of the fiat system, and they get to issue that debt. Remember, the fiat money is debt. They're issuing debt to the nation, and we then use that debt in our commerce because that debt is accepted as what? Legal tender. Now, we're just going to skim through the next two. So it's determine the dimensions of any coins, determine the percentage of impurities which coins other than gold or coins of silver of the Queen's Maundy money may contain. And now we get to the most important part of this, just one line. One line that changes absolutely everything when it comes to gold ownership, or what we think is ownership, in the Commonwealth and in Great Britain. And it says this: Her Majesty may from time to time, by proclamation made with the advice of Her or His Privy Council, do the following: call in coins of any date or denomination, or coins made before a date specified in the proclamation. Wow. So that means legally, at any point, the monarch, the reigning monarch, can call in all of those gold and silver coins that have been issued with their face on the back or any other monarch's face on the back throughout history. Any coin that has ever been issued by the Royal Mint or the National Mint of any one of these countries, because it's the same in all the other countries, as I'm going to show you in a second. At any point, those specific coins can legally, remember, the legal part of this is so key, because all of this is in law. That is how they can do these things. It's not theft if it's in law. It's just that we're ignorant of the law, or at least many people are. You are now enlightened. But it says here in section 3, in F5E, that the monarch at any point can call in coins of any date or denomination, and that includes all of those investment grade capital gains tax-free gold and silver coins and platinum too that people have been buying for over 50 years, since 1971. From the very beginning, it was written into law that at any point those coins could be recalled legally. It says call in coins of any date or denomination, or coins made before a date specified in the proclamation. They can regulate any matter relating to the coinage, which was before the passing of the Coinage Act 1870 within the prerogative of the Crown, capital C, and is not provided for in this act, nor was it provided for by that act. So it's saying that they can literally make any regulations around coinage that existed before the original Coinage Act in 1870. If it was their prerogative beforehand, the Crowns, they can go back to that. So if they wanted to go back to some kind of feudal law relating to coinage, they can do that. It's here in this act. So you'd literally have to go all the way back to William the Conqueror and look back at all of the different laws and acts and prerogatives that the Crown had between then and now to truly understand the scope of this act. Because it says there that they can literally regulate any matter relating to coinage which was before the passing of the Coinage Act 1870 within the prerogative of the Crown. So that is a sweeping power there. A sweeping power. It's way worse than what I just said probably, but I haven't had the time to go look through all of the different acts that existed prior to 1870, so who knows just how much power is vested through this act. Now hopefully you picked your jaw up off the floor, and we're going to jump forward to section 11 where it says the following. References in this act to coins made by the mint include references to coins made at any place with the authority of the mint. Now what this means is that this does not just apply to coins that are issued by the mint, it also applies to every single coin that has been issued with the authority of the mint. So there's lots of companies out there that issue gold and silver coins, commemorative coins, and they issue them with the monarch on the back. Now these are not classed as legal tender. They cannot be used as legal tender, the commemorative coins. However, they can be recalled as well. Now I'm not saying this is going to happen, and I'm not trying to scare people, but what I am saying is if we're ignorant of the law, we might at some point become somebody who falls foul of it in a really bad way. And I'm a person who likes to know what the risk is. I want to know what the risk of taking option A, B, C, D, E, F or G is. As an investor, that is how we protect ourselves from loss. Now, if there is a law out there that tells me that at any point somebody else could come and take that property from me, I want to know about it. And that's what it's about. It's about legal protection. You as a person who is putting your hard-earned money into something, you want the highest level of legal protection possible. If somebody tells you that they're going to take it in a crisis, or that they could even take it in a crisis, they might not tell you they're going to, but the very fact that they could suggests to me that it's probably not the best or wisest investment decision because there's unknown risk there. Now, if there's other things you could buy of a similar type that does give you full legal ownership, of course you would choose that over option A. If option B gives you full ownership, but option A tells you that they could take it with just a simple proclamation by a certain person, well, I don't think that's very fair and I wouldn't buy that. However, many people have been buying those things. Why? Because nobody reads the law. Now, I'm sure there's many people out there who will say this doesn't matter, it's not going to affect them, it's never going to happen, and that is absolutely their right to do so. However, for me personally, I take things like this seriously because I know that the law is absolutely critical for understanding property rights, and that in the future, any property rights will be interpreted through the law. So I really want to know if there's something in there that could lead to me losing my property. And then I can take action on it. I can actually come up with a strategy to make sure that I don't own the things that people can legally take from me. Now, I just wanted to move on to this final part of this one. Now, this one's interesting because it says, no person shall, except under the authority of a license granted by the Treasury, melt down or break up any metal coin which is for the time being current in the United Kingdom, or which, having been current there, has at any time after the 16th of May 1969 ceased to be so. Any person who contravenes subsection 1 of this section shall be liable, on the summary of conviction, to a fine not exceeding £400, on conviction on indictment to a fine or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or both. So what this means is, let's imagine there was this proclamation and they said, we're going to recall all of the bullion. I'm sorry everyone, there's been a war with China. China's got all this gold. We've just found out they've got so much gold. We're at war with them now and we need the gold, and it's a matter of national security. It's an emergency. We have to recall it all, just like they did in 1933 in America when they did a gold confiscation, which wasn't actually a confiscation. It was a demand to return gold to the Treasury. Some people abided by it. Most people actually didn't. That's the truth. Some people did, some people didn't. Now let's imagine that they did that again. And there's many scenarios I can imagine in the future where that could actually be done. I can almost hear the narratives in my head that would be used to try and justify that, and I could imagine that many people would be gullible enough to believe them. But what this means is that if anybody at that point decided, screw this, I'm going to melt it down so it's not gold bullion, they could be arrested and they could be put in jail. And it goes on to say here that if you are convicted of an offence under this section, so if you're convicted of melting down some gold from bullion form into something else, they can confiscate whatever it is you turned it into as well. Now, how they would figure that out, I don't know. That you would have to tell somebody that you melted it down. They would have to have some evidence of that. However, it does say here that if you do it, they could convict you and still take the gold from you. So if they had suspicions, they might say, well, we're taking that too. Now, I've looked at other countries as well, and yes, it's just the same. In fact, it's even worse, and I'm going to tell you that now in Canada. Now, this one is extremely worrying. And I'm just going to go through a few key points, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. And it says this: current coins. A coin is current for the amount of its denomination in the currency of Canada if it was issued under the authority of the Canadian Royal Mint or the Crown in any province of Canada before it became part of Canada, and if the coin was immediately before October the 15th, 1952, current and legal tender in Canada. Okay, fast forwarding. Calling in of coins and notes. The Governor of the Council may, by order, call in coins of any date or denomination that are current under Section 7. Now, I've just shown you Section 7, and that is a coin that is current for the amount of denomination by the Canadian Royal Mint, or anything that was legal tender before October the 15th, 1952. So pretty much every coin. Goes on to say, any notes that are current under Section 7.1. Redemption of coins. The Governor in Council may make regulations for the redemption by the Minister of Coins of the currency of Canada that are or that have at any time been current in Canada. So any coins throughout Canadian history can be withdrawn, including, of course, the gold and silver. Payments for redemption of coins. Payments for the redemptions of coins, including related costs, shall be made out of the Consolidated Revenue Fund on the authorization of the Minister. So they're saying there you might get something back if they take the coins off you. Now let's imagine that the currency is hyperinflating. Let's imagine gold's getting revalued, and it's going to be revalued from, I don't know, a few $1,000s per ounce to $20,000 per ounce, or $50,000 per ounce. And I've showed this graphic that I'm going to put on screen now with you before that shows you that if they really wanted to get rid of the sovereign debt, there is a mechanism they could do that with, and that's revaluing the gold. Now, if they was going to do that, I can guarantee you they would try and take your gold off you beforehand, because they wouldn't want you to become an overnight millionaire or trillionaire. They don't want you to have all of this wealth, would they? They'd want to use it for themselves. They'd want to take it back and use it as collateral for the banksters to pay off the debt. Now, my guess is if they ever were going to do a revaluation, they could potentially recall all of the gold coins that have been issued, so all of the gold coins that were coming from the mint, they could recall that and they could say, right, we're going to give you the nominal price for it. So let's imagine it's $3,000 per ounce. They could give you the $3,000 per ounce or £3,000 per ounce. And then they could say, okay, we've got all the gold back in now. We've used our proclamation to get it back. Legally, we can do this. And now we're going to revalue all of that gold at $50,000 per ounce. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, it means you've just had all of your currency devalued massively. You've had a great taking done to you in terms of your gold and silver holdings, and you have no legal recompense. Now, of course, this has all already happened. This is precisely what happened in 1933. Nothing I'm saying here is hypothetical. In 1933, they recalled all of the gold coins. They asked people to hand it over, and when they thought they had enough, they revalued those gold coins from $20.67 per ounce to $35 per ounce. It was a devaluation. It was a theft of the wealth of the nation. And it says here, the Governor in Council can make regulations specifying the means or methods of ascertaining, determining or calculating the equivalent dollar value of that currency, unit of account, gold or combination thereof. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that they can say that your gold is worth whatever they think it's worth. Now, let's imagine they was going to call in all the gold. The minister was going to call it all in by order. That's what it says in the law. They can do that. And people started to turn in their gold. All these sad people, they had hundreds and hundreds of ounces of gold maple leafs and silver maple leafs, and they were turning it in. And they said, don't worry, everyone. We're going to give you the value that we think you deserve. Now, they can value that gold at any price they want. It says here, the Governor in Council can make regulations specifying the means or method of ascertaining, determining or calculating the equivalent dollar value of the currency. So they can pretty much say it's worth whatever they want and give you whatever they want. Part 2, exchange fund account. The special account in the name of the minister, known as the exchange fund account, is continued, and all assets acquired and held by or on behalf of the minister in the exchange fund account continue to be so held. Purposes of the account. The purposes of the exchange fund account are to aid in the control and protection of the external value of the monetary unit of Canada, and to provide a source of liquidity for the government of Canada. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means they've got a special account in Canada, and at any point, if they feel the government is going to go insolvent, they can take that gold, sell it, or revalue it and put it into the exchange fund account to bail out the Canadian government. It's already there in law. It's right here in front of your face. And I'll go on to read you the next bit. And it says this: the power to acquire or sell. The minister may acquire or borrow assets to be held in the exchange fund account and sell or lend those assets in order to carry out the policy. So there you have it. In black and white and neon yellow, it says the minister can acquire or borrow assets. Now, who do you think is going to be acquiring or borrowing those assets from over there in Canada? And it goes on to say that all amounts received by the minister from transactions carried out under subsections 17.2 and 2 shall be credited to the exchange fund account. So like I said, everyone, it's even more shocking in Canada. Now in Australia, they actually just have the same Coinage Act as in Great Britain. They just literally have it as a consolidated act that's used across many crown colonies. Canada has their own, but as I said, it looks to me even worse. It's a bit more shocking. And, you know, listen, I'm not telling people these things to scare them. I'm not sharing these things for novelty. I'm sharing them because the law matters. And throughout history, the law has been used to take from people what they thought was legally theirs, but what ultimately turned out to be legally somebody else's. Now, we've found out recently through the Great Taking and the many other pieces of work I've done on this channel that we don't actually own what we think we own. It's already owned by people. And the more we engage with their systems, we actually put ourselves at risk. We are actually agreeing to contracts that we do not know. We do not know what we're agreeing to. We're putting our assets into a trust-based system. And what that means is we're holding these assets in trust for a beneficiary. The beneficiary is the state or the crown or the monarch or whoever you want to call it, the banksters. They have ultimate power over the asset because they can recall it at any point, and you can be legally punished if you don't abide by that ruling. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, another shocking reveal on the Parallel Systems broadcast in terms of how your property rights are not quite as robust as you think they are. And this is when it comes to gold and silver. Now, I'm sure this has shocked many people. Some people will ignore it. Some people will be terrified by it. But what I would suggest you do is you take a deep breath and you just take some time to think about how we're getting ourselves into these situations. How are we finding ourselves trapped in this corporate law system? I would say we are not looking at the contracts that are being put in front of us. Because when we do something like buy something that they say is capital gains tax free, nothing is free in this life. And therefore, we are probably entering into a secret contract. In this case, I'd say it's a trust agreement. You're holding the asset in trust for another beneficiary, and that's the state. And at any point, they can recall those assets from the trust. And you've signed that agreement by buying the asset. We just don't know it. So moving forwards, I would suggest you take some time to read the law. That's all I do, and I find all kinds of interesting things. Now, I'm going to leave it there for tonight's episode, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like and thumbs up. Please let me know in the comment section what you think about what I found out. I'll see you all in the next one.